I'm quite excited about the panel of the panelists that we have in this discussion. And some of you did join a few minutes back, and you saw retail as an industry is obviously getting disrupted. It's evolving and evolving rapidly. Maybe one of the few industries where the extent of disruption is to a much greater extent, while all industries are getting disrupted. So in that context, I think having a group like this, and we do have senior representation from online grocers, from offline who are going to becoming omni-channel. So we do have folks from Flipkart and StarQuik. We do have panelists who are from offline retail business like Spencer's or Landmark. We do have vertical category specialists, whether it's furniture, whether it's jewelry. So this is a fantastic, I think, group to have. Obviously, we all know the pandemic-related disruption and some of the key trends that the pandemic has sort of accelerated. I mean, consumers buying online was a trend which was even pre-pandemic was something that was happening. It's just got accelerated, and like Pinaki said in the previous conversation, something that might have happened over maybe 5, 8, or 10 years has happened in a year. So with this context of sort of the disruption that's happening in our business across different categories, we'll be very keen to sort of get different perspectives from each one of you about how are you seeing your business getting reimagined. Now it's the direction could be different for each of your businesses. So your perspective on how you're seeing your business and your categories evolving, and what are the key success factors to get it right? So, and we did hear about conversations in the previous discussion about the role of technology. How can we sort of leverage technology a bit more? Are we looking at different channels to sort of succeed? I mean, like Pinaki was saying, or for that matter, in fact, one of the other panelists was saying that we do have those who are pure online retailers sort of also coming into the offline space, vice versa. There is a lot of convergence that's happening. So how you reimagine also could vary. And at least our belief is that there could be, depending on how you reimagine your business, there could be winners who would emerge out of this entire pandemic. Very happy to sort of just get your perspective on each of these. If I may start, I think in no particular order, Gaurav, with you.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, tell us how you're seeing. And do you feel the need to sort of reimagine your business because you're already in a digitally native business? So do you see that you still do you need to reimagine, or you need to change the way you're running your business? Help us with your perspective.
Sure. So thanks, Anurag. Fantastic introduction. Just a brief background about StarQuik. We are the online grocery business for Tata Group under Trent. Just so that everybody has context. So we've been looking at this business now for the last 6 years or so, and the sector has sort of gone through its evolution, and thankfully, this especially over the last, I would say, 12 months, a lot of things have become clear. A lot of things which were actually open-ended or where the jury was out, I think they've become a lot clear. In terms of the evolution of the business, I would say there are 3 vectors. Number 1, players. Number 2, customer proposition. Number 3, the actual requirement. All right. So as far as players are concerned, essentially there are 3 types of players. Guys are only online, the big basket and grocers of the world. Even Flipkart, we've got Manisha. There are omni-channel people, like DMart Ready and us. And there are, service providers like Dunzo. So, my sense is that the market will gradually gravitate towards, the omni-channel players. The online players come with their own benefits. They are digital first, but because they don't have the stores, the costs, could tend to be higher. While for omni-channel players, it's a different problem because we have our stores. We've got to sort of retrofit our business back into the store and make sure we deliver the right service levels from a live store. So, I think that's the direction in which the market is going. I think from a customer proposition point of view, again, the player has to pick the lane in which he's playing, right? The customer's got a monthly shop use case, and the customer's got a top-up use case. Now, a player like Dunzo, it would work well for him to do top-up because he's got low cost of delivery. But if you want to really run a sustainable, profitable business, monthly shop is something that people are going after. And more consistently, we've seen that with Big Basket, Grofers, Flipkart, Amazon, Jio. So, the jury there is sort of getting settled where people are going after the monthly shop. As far as the customer requirement is concerned, and I think that's an important piece here because that has changed dramatically over the last few years. Earlier what we saw was that the customer, when they were new to online, the customer was basically getting onboarded with the help of those dramatic new customer offers. You would get $200 off, or just the novelty aspect of ordering groceries online. I think that was what bringing people on board. But now, as the customers themselves have matured, their expectations from the online grocer are actually very similar to what they expect from an offline grocer. They want the best of prices and promotions. They want fantastic range so that they get everything in one place. And they are looking for good quality. I mean, fresh fruits and vegetables. It becomes almost like a disqualifying criteria. So if you don't get these basic, characteristics right, which were possibly, not the linchpin earlier, you are disqualified, and convenience is almost like a given. So, and of course, once you layer that with the convenience, of the customer to be able to build a 20-item cart, from a 6-inch phone, then, that's where you are able to build that connect with the customer. So just to summarize the sort of monologue, I think, the market's become a lot clearer with pure online and omni-channel guys emerging. And both the guys are actually looking on the other end. The online guys are trying to open stores and vice versa. The proposition is going more monthly shop, or the stock up use case. And the customer requirement, I think, is also merging where the expectations from an online and an offline grocer are on similar standards in terms of quality, range, and price. So, that's my 2 bits.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you are seeing clearly, or there's greater clarity in terms of where the market is now going to move, how the customer expectations are going to evolve.
Yes.
Very, very well said, Gaurav. Maybe if I can get you in, Manish, how do you see this at Flipkart? I mean, obviously, you are a online-only player. So do you see this convergence happening as you sort of engage with and interact with customers?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the invite and the opportunity to talk to the esteemed colleagues. Yeah. So I think going back to your initial question on how we are reimagining the digital business, right? In an e-commerce company like Flipkart, and I have been here for the last 7-8 years, what we have seen is that we are looking to reimagine customer ecosystem, supplier ecosystem, like every 2 years, right? And that has been our journey over the last 8 to 10 years. But even after that kind of reimagination, the last 7 to 10 months has been quite a spectacular change in how online commerce has evolved. I think you or the previous panelist placed it very beautifully. It's like one 10-year of thing happening in like 7 to 8 months, right? And I think if I broadly see what has happened is that a lot of these trends, which were a smaller trend pre-COVID, accelerated significantly in the last 7 to 8 months. And we I think if I look at it from the next 2 to 3 years or 5 years, right? I think all those trends are going to amalgamate together to really scale the commerce, right? So if I can, touch upon like 3-4 trends which we saw in the business, right? The first trend was from a category mix perspective. So a lot of these categories, which were sort of, you can call it discretionary, became essential during this whole lockdown period, which was specifically the work from home categories, like which was electronics category, laptop, mobile, productivity, we call it like productivity instruments, right? And that become very important. Furniture, we saw a huge scale up in furniture categories, right? Other than the normal essentials category, which scaled up, which is mask, sanitizer, grocery was a big scale up because that is, that was the only way you could buy grocery, right? So that is one element which we saw the category thing. And though right now there is a lot of opening up of opening up people, and mobility has improved significantly, we see some of those trends coming back to a higher than pre-COVID level. And I think it's a fundamental shift which has happened in many of these categories in the last 7 to 8 months. Second is the consumer shift, right? Lot of customers who were hesitant to come online, slight bit, and because of the nature what happened during lockdown and post lockdown, where they had to go back to online. So a lot of migration of purely offline customers to coming to a online plus offline habit, and we are seeing those customers sticking to online because they have done this 2 3 4 times, right, transaction during the last 7 to 8 months. And we do expect this become to be a bigger mac, what we call monthly active customer driver, over the next 2 3 years. One of the biggest in consumer trend we saw is the tier 2 tier 3 customers. Now tier 2 tier 3 customer, the new user growth in these cities has been quite at a positive rate pre-COVID also, but during the COVID that grew exponentially, and I think that is going to be and remain a big story for online commerce for the next 3 to 5 years, as we see. The other trend that we are seeing is especially on the vernacular. So India is, people say, right, India is not a single market. It is like 25 different markets, right, with local merchandise, but local language, right? Because you are, transacting on a 6-inch phone. And we saw a big significant spike in vernacular as a way of transacting on the mobile app. It grew by 2.5x in customer from pre-COVID to festive period that we saw. The other trend that we saw was the digital transaction, which is the digitization of the payment instrument. Cash on delivery has been a significant story for driver of commerce. And with UPI, which was a pretty good significant growth earlier than COVID also, but during COVID it really grew significantly. You guys would have seen the UPI numbers as a standalone entity also, but on commerce platform it grew by like 4.5x between January and August. So significant growth on that. The other big trend, which is on the supply side, we are seeing a lot, is digitization of MSME sector. So for a brief period of 3-4 months, e-commerce became like a sort of a livelihood support for a lot of these sectors, right? And I think this whole digitization trend that we are seeing in the MSE is going to be a significant departure from what has happened in the last 20 years in retail, right? All the sellers, and we are seeing significant number of sellers coming from tier 2 cities like Tirupur, Saharanpur, and all of these places. And what we are doing as a player is to how do we support them, right? Which is from working capital support to onboarding them on our platform, and how can we enable them right from planning, inventory planning, and all those things which are required to help them grow and sell their merchandise to our customers that we are bringing on the platform. So a lot of significant changes which has happened in the last 6, 7 to 8 months. Some of the trends was there, it has become sharper, new trends has happened, and we do see this space to become more and more interesting, more customers coming in, more MSME sector coming on the platform to keep on scaling the business. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Manish. So the trend obviously is very clear that there is clarity, there is scale in terms of consumers. New sets of consumers are coming onto the platform, whether it's tier 2, tier 3, even vernacular. MSMEs coming in. So clearly, it is becoming a far more broad-based phenomenon or trend, and not just a metro phenomenon, and not just a few categories in a metro. Kavita, if I can request you to sort of come in here. Obviously, you are focused on a category rather than a platform. Did you need to rethink about your business model in India, and how do you see your business evolving?
Sure, Anurag. Thanks for having me on the panel, and I think it's a very good discussion that is happening here. I can just talk about the important. As I hear what you are there.
We're not able to hear you, Kavita. Sorry.
Can you not hear me?
Oh yes, now we can hear you. We were not able to hear you earlier.
Okay, so maybe I can start afresh. I was just saying that we, of course, have had to reimagine the business in the context of furniture and home furnishing. And there are three important dimensions that we've been looking at. One is digital adoption. And this is a very interesting trend that some of the other panelists have spoken about as well. We can clearly see that India went through a period of a very strict lockdown, and online was maybe one of the saviors at that point in time. It is also interesting to see now from market research reports that amongst all countries across the world, maybe India was one country where digital adoption amongst consumers was one of the highest. We almost saw 25% new consumers coming online, and this included both the digital natives as well as the first-time consumers who were trying to shop online. So obviously this meant that we had to make some changes in terms of the business model to accommodate these different segments of consumers who were coming in. And then if you look at home and home furnishing, it was always a category that needed a certain amount of support in terms of the buying journey itself. The second important trend that I would highlight on is the one around conscious spending. We have spoken a bit about maybe the essential versus the discretionary spend, but it is interesting to see in the context of home that home and home furnishing related spends have moved from a nice to have function in the home, for example, work from home furniture, to an essential need that everybody needs to have. But despite that, we can clearly see that consumers have become much more mindful when it comes to spending money. There are a lot more of planned purchases and far lesser impulse. And there is a bigger question on value for money. And there is a lot more of thorough research that is happening amongst consumers before they make the purchase decision. This also has meant that during the pandemic and the post-pandemic, we also looked at what does affordability mean in the context of home furnishing. How can we not just talk about the price of products, but also bring together the right set of smart solutions that can address some of the challenges of the consumers. And the third important aspect, I think Manish also spoke about it, is the fact that the home has been center stage, and we can see a big increase in the spending around home. We can see that whether it is work from home furniture, storage and organizing needs, cooking and eating needs, there has been an increased spending in that area. So that has also meant, us having to relook at what kind of product range and solutions do we really take to market. So I would say that it has been across all these three dimensions, and then of course we have adapted to this in many ways in terms of both supporting the customer digital journeys as well as the solutions related to home furnishing. So that's where we are in terms of relooking at the business itself.
Okay, so when we were doing, in fact, our research with consumers, and we've been researching every 15 days over the last year across, in fact, 45 countries. The conclusion that we've arrived at is obviously, like you said, a lot of these trends are permanent in nature. 90% of the consumers actually said some of their behavioral changes are more permanent. So it's not that they go back to how they were behaving earlier. And in a sense, we feel that literally this is going to be the decade of the home. So a lot of categories, the consumption of a lot of categories, whether it's entertainment, education, even food. So across categories, this will have, given that people are going to spend more time at home, work from home, clearly this will be the decade of the home. And I'm sure that should have a tailwind and a positive impact for your business. But clearly, I think...
Absolutely, Anurag. We are delighted for that.
So I'm sure, like you called out, reimagining the portfolio, looking at how you can communicate with them, your business model, the mix of your stores and online, and how you engage. All of that is something that you are reimagining. Let me get Anurag in, Anurag Jain. When you are in the food service business, obviously more consumers and people staying back at home would mean more consumption possibly of at-home food. How are you seeing in food service your business, and have you had to reimagine your business, or it's just that you were already there and you're just doing more of what you were doing?
Yeah, so good evening, Anurag, and good evening, fellow panelists. I think it's a great question, and the context could not be more significant at this point in time. Maybe I'll just spend 30 seconds just introducing JFL a little bit, and then that will kind of help in setting up the context for what I'm going to share. So Jubilant Foodworks is, as maybe most of you know, one of the largest food services companies in the country, and we are the master franchisee for Domino's in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Similarly, for Dunkin' Donuts, we run that brand in India. And we have a bunch of homegrown brands, which we're very, very excited about. I think, to your question, have we had to reimagine, or were we already in that journey? I think the answer is yes to both, yeah? In some areas, it just accelerated the transformation and the innovation that we were working towards. And in some areas, it really required us to, again, reimagine the business, right? Of course, in accordance with the shifting consumer trends. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the consumer trends because the fellow panelists have talked about it, but maybe I'll share one or two examples of how did we react to it. So if you look at Domino's and, running 1,300 plus restaurants in the country, delivery has always been a big part of a business. And this only accelerated, during this last 11 to 12 months, which also meant that we had to make it far more convenient, safer, right? And also the preferred choice for customers, given that there were less restaurants running, but still they had a variety of choices thanks to the aggregator platforms that we have today. So to that end, we really, really focused on certain specific initiatives to kind of now cater to the new customer requirements, if you will. For example, safety, right? So we were able to react fast to it. We took learnings from the China market, from Domino's in China, and we were the first in the industry to launch what we call the zero contact delivery, yeah, and then opening and strengthening other digital channels so that customers could now order through us. We knew this was going to lead to a major transformation, that our restaurants, the dining experience would be massively impacted, and it was kind of imperative that we now double down in terms of product design, technology, to be able to offer convenient, safe choices to our customers. Yeah. Also, we took that time and very quickly built a much more stronger capability and team that then was continuously focusing on building the best digital class, and omni-channel experience, whether it was the mobile app, whether it was our websites, and integrating with a bunch of other channels. Yeah. But having said that, we also had to reimagine now what lies ahead, not in the short term, but in the long term. And one of the things we kind of thought about is that dine-in for sure is going to take a hit, right? And will lead to consumer shift in terms of preferences of how consumers order food or where they want to have their food. And so we looked at a lot of our research and we said, okay, what are the new occasions when people would love to have pizza, for example, but would not want to go to the restaurants either because they were not allowed to operate or because they wanted to avoid public places, yeah? And we said, can we now come up with a new channel of fulfillment, which is different from delivery, which is different from dine-in? And to that extent, a couple of months back, we launched what we call drive and pick, where as a customer, you come online, you place an order, you take your vehicle to the restaurant or close to the restaurant, let's say within a 20 meter to 50 meter proximity. And our restaurant staff comes and delivers it to you in your vehicle while the pizza is still hot, right? And then, if you want to have it right there, or you want to take it to your home, or want to have it elsewhere, you can do that. Yeah. So that's an example of how we've tried to innovate and look at the new occasions that would come out of this, and then further kind of seamlessly try to make that experience much more smoother for our customers. Similarly, the embracement for technologies inside the restaurant itself, right? So, I think everyone is now familiar with people scanning a code and being able to access menus, so on and so forth. So we've done a lot of back of the house technology innovation to again offer a convenient, seamless, and safe experience to our customers, and still an ongoing work, to be honest with you. Manish talked about vernacular, right? And we said, we already have a great reach across the mobile apps and through aggregators to our customers. But what about those customers who are not comfortable ordering through an English app? And to that extent, we launched our Hindi app, which the early signs are very positive, that new customers who've come on board and are using that, who previously would not have had the liberty and the luxury of ordering through that, Similarly, again, similar to what Flipkart did, we looked at payment methods. It was no cash for a while, so we expanded our portfolio of payments that customers could use and then place an order. Also, use those payment methods when pizza was delivered at the door. Internally, we had to streamline costs. Of course, running such a big, massive operations needs, again, technology to be kind of used in a much more simpler fashion and cost-effective fashion. So yeah, these are a bunch of things that we've had to do. Of course, a bunch of it got accelerated, and we're super happy for that. But we also had to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. At least, like you said, while the dine-in is coming down, but clearly the online ordering business should make up for that and obviously drive a lot of that growth. But it's very interesting to hear the fact that your dine-in is getting replaced by actually dine in the car near the store. So new consumption models, new customer journeys will evolve as we sort of move on. Let me get in Aditya here. Aditya, you are in the jewelry business. In fact, we were looking at one of the diamond retailers in the US, and the CEO told us that we've shut 300 of our stores in the last 12 months, and we've obviously amplified our online business. And net, we are still at the same level of business as we were last year. So in your business, Aditya, do you see as in jewelry as a category, do you see even such a premium category, high value category also shifting more towards the online?
Thanks, Anurag. I think a great example that you started with this US diamond retailer that you're talking about. And let me start by sharing this small challenge that we were facing. I'm like, last year, April was when we were kind of slotted to open the Tanishq's first international store. And so all preparations were on, and then the pandemic struck. So we kind of kept the team intact, kept them on the training and all. And we waited, because still in April, March, you had no idea how long this is going to continue, right? And we were planning to open in Dubai as our first location. And increasingly, the news which was coming in from the Middle East, not just from the pandemic perspective, but because of the oil economy being pretty hit badly, because less people moving out on roads, the oil consumption, there were various other factors, but the Gulf market was down. And the similar story, what you shared about this diamond retailer, we were hearing in the Middle East as well, that a large number of jewelry retailers were actually shutting down, and even some of the large retail chains from India, which are already present in the Middle East, they were significantly consolidating their business in terms of the number of stores they were cutting down. And amidst all that, we were planning to open and enter into a market. So there was that doubt always was there. But coming to the point of how is the business or the industry as such is evolving? See, what's happening is if we take the Western economies like US, they're already almost up to 20% of the business, despite the fact that jewelry as a category is a very sensory experience category. You need to touch and feel the product before you actually select it. It's a high involvement category. In the markets like US, it's almost up to 20% already being sold online. Whereas in India, it was less than 1%. It is still less than 1%. Given the size of the India market. But there is a huge shift happening. So even before COVID, what was happening, I can talk about the Tanishq customer base at least. 60% of our customers who were coming in to buy in the brick and mortar stores, they were doing their online research before coming into the store. So the importance of being present online in form of your catalog and what are the specific facets of those products, it was very important. And that has only got amplified during COVID period, because while initially for a few months it was locked down, but the pent up demand and the love for jewelry that the Indians have, as soon as the markets opened up, we saw that uptick in the sale. And good thing is YTD, we are actually on a growth compared to last year. So
And,
that's where we are.
and is all of that recovery still back in the offline stores, or are you seeing?
No, so so what's happening actually is while the e-commerce sale has improved and it has significantly improved over previous years, but it is the assisted selling which has really taken up. So what is the number of footfalls might still be lesser, but here what is happening is now we have introduced and that's part of the reimagine of the business, the video calling services, wherein you choose a product first on the online site. Amongst that category, you choose specific three, four products where the staff in the store will help you through video calling facilities to select the product. And then, of course, as one of the panelists earlier was mentioning, including things like curbside pickup. And those are there. Like you complete the whole transaction, but you just come to the store, do the final pickup, because in jewelry as a category, you need to take certain customer signatures and stuff which are regulatory requirements. So those are still there, but so the assisted selling is the new normal in let's say at least in the world of Tanish.
Yeah, no, I mean very clear. So the role of the store is evolving while in the across the entire path to purchase, customers are spending more time online. So you need to be really attracting them online while the final transaction could still be completed in the store or through an assisted selling. Very, very interesting. In fact, I was talking to the Tanish CEO in one of these panel discussions earlier. That this was during the peak pandemic, and he mentioned that you had something called as a Project M for the karigars. Whereby because the karigars who were more from Bengal couldn't come to your workshops, you were actually thinking of how you will take work to the karigars.
Workshop to them, yes.
Workshop to them. So I mean, this is how the reimagination of some of our operating models will become. So it's very interesting how the not just the customer end but also even the supply end is sort of the reimagination is happening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really fantastic. Let me come to you, Abhishek. Clearly, you've set up your shoe retail business over the last 2 or 3 years. So, obviously you are omni-channel. So, do you think the whole omni-channel promise is something that we are today well equipped to really deliver on, or it's a long journey that we will be on?
Hi Anurag, hi all the panelists and all the people who have joined us live. I've been listening to all of these conversations, and the buzzword of omni-channel has been there present for the last 6 years. Okay, and I've been there. I've attended a lot of panels. I've attended a lot of summits and everywhere where all the brands every time they've been talking about omni-channel, how omni-channel is going to be. Really, it is very important. It is very low. But what we as humans are slave of our habits, right? So this pandemic, what it has done is it has really made us to adopt that online channel much faster as compared to everybody, and everybody is talking about it. We all have seen the tremendous growth which you've seen in the online space by people out there. So though my brand and I come from a group which is Landmark Group. I come from a group which is Landmark Group, and Landmark Group has a very, very strong offline presence, right? And we were discussing about launching other concepts in India from GCC region, and we decided that we would want to go the online first strategy. So that in itself is reimagining, right? That online is becoming so important, and so that it's better to launch online first than to go offline, because obviously you have. I'm not saying that it will be a preferred channel, but at least you get to know, you test waters, what kind of products are selling, where your consumers are, you have all the data, and then you go and have your offline stores. Having said that, like we were talking about workshop going to the karigars in my earlier company, we were talking about. I was fortunate to have a change during the pandemic. But having said that, in my earlier company, we were talking about how we can take the store to the consumers, right? Because ultimately, what is happening is that you your consumers cannot come to you. So you ultimately you have to go to your consumers, and you know who your consumers are. You have all your you have all your data. You know who your consumers are, what do they buy, and how can you be closer to them as fast as possible and giving them a familiar face. So what we were trying to do at that point of time is to get the store to the consumer with the familiar faces. So we wanted store guys to deliver the product with everything, all services included. So when a person goes to a store, if he buys a trouser, so he gets an alteration done. So how do you solve for that consumer at that point in time? Because if he orders a trouser and he needs an alteration, will it be possible for the person to go take his size there, then again come back, or just to give a call to the consumer, ask him what is your usual size so that we can alter the product and all of this? So all of this came into this, and all of this was fast, So I think the key here is to reimagine business and be as fast as possible to the consumer and give that change, because you have to be available to your consumer now 24/7. You have to be, because consumers are buying online. They can buy whenever they want to. So that we have to reimagine that in terms of that, yes, online is going to be there because now it is habit. Now you know that it is much more convenient, and convenience will always be the driving factor for somebody to buy. That's one. So these trends are going to stay. Yes. Trends might change in terms of categories, where people would prefer buying some categories at home and prefer going to these stores and buying those categories. But I think everything else is going to be the same. So as fast and as far as omnichannel technologies are concerned, in last 6 months or so, or 7 months after the pandemic, I have seen a lot of technologies coming in where people are trying to track, because now what they want to also do is track shipments from the stores. They want to leverage on how can the people from the store deliver, because we've already seen that there is a drop in traffic in the store. So how do you leverage on the people who are already there in the store? So if there can be slots where people from the store can deliver, and how do we track those? How do we track those SLAs, that if this product is there in the store and is supposed to be delivered by this guy, is he able to deliver it in 2 hours time? Is there no order pending in the store? So those kind of technologies are also coming in now, and those changes are happening very fast. So so yes, of course, I mean, we are still not there, but I think a lot of technologies are coming in, and probably next 6 months or 7 months time, we'll have a good, stable infrastructure where, if not everything plugged in together, but at least you'll have solutions for plug and play to, give those kind of services to consumers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So clearly, I mean, what you're saying is these are trends which are now more or less permanent in nature, and we do need to reimagine how we will deliver these services and products to our consumers.
Yeah.
Harshvardhan, if I can sort of come to you, and you've heard all of us. So, I mean, from your perspective, are you seeing it any different, or is this something that resonates with you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Anurag. I think it's a pleasure. And it's been really insightful hearing to a lot of the industry stalwarts with us today. I think in my professional view, Anurag, I'm very clear the way this entire landscape is changing. And here is why I put it very upfront. If you look at the entire retail industry of $850 billion, which is slated to go to $1.2 trillion, after 2 decades of modern retail, it's around 10%, 11% at max, right? The big box and the supermarket formats. E-commerce, fortunately, in 2 decades, and there have been 2 hockey stick curves, largely with tailwinds. While it initially started post the Lehman Brothers crisis in 2009, and we saw the Junglees and the Amazons of the world come in with the early advents of Make My Trip, then I think a big tailwind was demonetization, which led to greater adoption of digital payments. And I think what we've just witnessed in the last 9 to 12 months has been a great consumer behavioral tailwind, where essentially newer digital natives have come in, and a lot of people globally, including Satya Nadella, would have very rightly put in, we've seen a digital transformation of 3 years in 9 months. Whether it is Kevin Johnson, who's saying that we always used to think in 2 mindsets. It's either inside the store, which is dine in for Starbucks, or it's something which is a takeaway or a pickup for Starbucks. But now he's saying that we're seriously considering something as called as the third place, right? So when you look at it, and 4 to 5% of e-commerce, the big question amongst us is what is that is going to disrupt the 85% of retail? If this is what we've been able to achieve, which is 15% of impact on the retail, right? I think the big learning that has come in last 12 months, and specifically because of two trends. One, the first and foremost from a consumer standpoint is what I call as the affordability reset or the basket reset phenomenon. And look at it from a consumer standpoint. Suddenly consumers acknowledge to a newer set of needs in their basket, right? They suddenly thought a sanitizer is important. For the first time, we heard products being segregated as essentials and non-essentials, and consumers were very clear that there are newer set of needs coming in. So there was a constant rationalization between the older needs and the new needs, which formed a very peculiar pattern that if you see it from an offline standpoint, shopping strips went down, but the average basket value grew up, right? The digital natives adoption on both ends of the spectrum has moved up massively. So both of these changes have happened. The second big thing is a greater rise on the middle India. And I think a lot of people have also not looked at that phenomenon, which basically is at the cusp of both urban and rural. And that is the reason we saw the large amount of 33% urbanization in last 1 decade. So here as I look at it, when I look at all these parameters together, that if you really look at the future of retail and you could take an inspiration from either the West, when we've seen a little pilot of Amazon Go stores, or you could look a little deeper into East and say the 64 Homa stores by Alibaba, which are the cashless stores. I think the future of retail is a pure amalgamation where consumer essentially and inherently are omnichannel. They've always been omnichannel, right? In today's day and age, a consumer spends equal amount of time off the screen as he does on the screen. So it would be a very foolhardy bet to peg a particular business model saying which is more sustainable, despite you may have a different consideration on unit economics. So essentially the future of retail is truly phygital, which is at the cusp of physical and digital. And once you grasp that fact, I think taking that learning at Spencer's Retail, and I would want to put that into context, is the big change in last 9 months, which consumers have undertaken on a daily purchase category, which is e-grocery. And if you look at it, Anurag, I think across the spectrum of e-commerce, it's been the most difficult category to problem solve. And we've seen very stalwarts with war chests of billions of dollars, but not being able to solve hyperlocal grocery because the mindset is completely different. You don't need a centralized inventory and a high efficiency in scale and logistics. And it's a simple thing that when a homemaker orders her grocery, she wants it fresh and she wants it in 2 hours. I think that's the simplistic way to understand and put it, and that's the way e-grocery gets cracked. And hence the development of the shift that we've seen, and grocery as a category which has become pivotal in bringing a large amount of consumers, and the active shoppers in India have moved up massively from 120 million to north of 220 million, and that's the big shift. And it could be seen analogous to the demonetization payment shift that we've seen. In fact, senior citizens who'd been really agnostic of the e-commerce development so far and were not very savvy ordering groceries are now ordering groceries on WhatsApp. So very clearly put, at Spencer's, we have store as a platform as a strategy, which is simply put saying that while consumers have a tendency to come to physical stores, we have an equal responsibility to make store a platform where store travels to the consumers. And that's the genesis and core of what we've done in last 12 months. And we truly believe that to be a truly omnichannel company, and just to put that in metrics, we were possibly 7 to 8% pre-pandemic, and we are very healthy 20 to 24% across our out-of-store channels, which essentially means that a large amount of people, whether they are interacting through our app, web, which I believe have become very traditional and passe, there are more better things that are there in the innovation curve. Which is basically, we launched India's first Spencer's Grocery Assistant. Look at it from a senior citizen standpoint, and they're very easy, giving a call which gets recorded and everything gets ordered. And you can put the phone down, nobody to talk, or you just text over WhatsApp, which senior citizens are forwarding messages day in and day out. So a more convenient platform, and all of them have taken an uptake, and possibly from every side of the metric, whether it is MAUs or the size of business, have seen an uptake of 8 to 10 times. What comes to fruition is a big realization in terms of industry and in terms of business, is there's a very typical efficiency frontier in the industry, Anurag, which essentially, if you plot the willingness to pay of consumers versus the cost of fulfillment. And we've seen that change. We've seen fresh markets coming in or organic markets coming in, and people believe that it's very fresh, so they're willing to pay more. But the cost of fulfillment, because of the inefficiencies in scale, is higher too. Then that gets disrupted by a big box retailer like a Walmart, and that gets disrupted again. And suddenly there's a newer player comes in like a Big Basket or Spencer's Retail or the Amazon Go stores or the Alibaba Homa stores, and they're consistently pushing the efficiency frontier up. So the realization essentially is there would be consistent upping or up leveling of the existing efficiency frontiers. It may not be very prudent to choose your battle saying it's online or offline or whether it is omnichannel. But I think if a mix helps you to push your efficiency frontier further with higher economies of scale and better unit economics, I think then if you're able to bring that connected strategy together, that's how the brand should think going forward. So that's my 2 bits on that.
Fantastic, Harshavardhan. I think great perspective. The way you put it, in fact, that brings me, the way you put it clearly brings me to the next point, and this is something that we'll go across with everybody. We broadly, if we listen to what all of you have said, clearly the trends are there. It's a no-brainer. However, the key question is, in different categories, in the path to purchase, the role could be different. But so much of change has happened in so short a time. We've all understood that, but getting that right, getting our organization, the might of our organization to also evolve and align the newer capabilities needed, the newer technologies needed, possibly newer partnerships needed. We all saw companies tying up with a Dunzo or a Swiggy for a last mile delivery as soon as COVID happened. So clearly, it's easier said than done. How do we get this right? Because customers will be unforgiving. They, want the experience. Oh, this is the experience I was getting offline. This is what I want online, or vice versa. I was getting this online. I want this offline. I don't think we've, as organizations, customers are giving us time to evolve at a slow pace. So it'll be interesting to get, I think, different perspectives of what are the challenges you're seeing, because the trends, external trends, customer trends, we don't control. So how do we now manage this? How do we deliver the same experiences across different customer journeys? There was in-store, there was at home, now there is a third place. There was like dine in, and then there was dine at home, and now there's a dine in the car. How do you get all of this, with the right efficiency, the efficiency frontier that you spoke about, right? We do need the new technologies. It's evolving. Every 3 months, I see there is a new technology which sort of is there to solve a particular problem. Let me come to you, Kavita. Let's see. Do you really face these challenges, or do you think, as an organization, you've been able to navigate some of these things?
Very valid question, Anurag, and we of course do face these challenges. At the outset, what I would say is.
Sorry, again.
Or e-commerce. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not either the physical format or the e-commerce format, but honestly, it's very important for us to go back to some fundamental principles and remind ourselves that 80% of the customer journeys actually start online, right? And then what we can do as an organization, as a retailer, is how do we enable those journeys, right? So it is up to the customer to make a choice whether they want to start the journey online and continue with it, or at some stage, maybe they want to buy a sofa now and they would actually like to visit a physical format to get the touch and feel, the comfort and convenience and all of those aspects, apart from the look and feel, which to a large extent we can today render on a website as well, right? And then the question after that is, even after making a trip to a physical format, a customer could decide that I'm not making my decision now. I would like to go back home, think through this, and then make a final decision. And then the confirmation process in the shopping journey could still happen online, right? So if you look at it, what we can do as organizations is how do we enable this, omni-channel journeys, which are the reality today. So a couple of examples I can take from the initial stages of the pandemic. For example, if you look at the March, April, May timeframe, most businesses were closed, right? E-commerce was not possible except for essential services. And at that point in time, the only approach we could take was how do we first support our consumers? Because suddenly everybody's spending so much time at home and home is center stage. Now people have to work from home. People have to, maybe cook 3 meals a day at home with no help and so on. How can we make some of those processes a lot more easier and simpler for the customer, right? The second important aspect as retailers we always need to think about is our co-workers, right? They were going through a very challenging time as well. And how could we actually support our co-workers in that journey, right? Because they are the forefront of meeting customers in the retail environment. And then as the situation stabilized, we came to a time frame when, maybe e-commerce opened up in a good number of cases, but physical retailing still did not see the visitation come back. And this is exactly where we started to look at both the digital natives as well as the first-time customer who's going to try and shop online. How do we enable that process for them? So we launched services like Click and Collect. I think some of the panelists spoke about it. But more importantly, online personal shopper services to help and handhold the customers during the shopping journey. As I mentioned before, home furnishing is a category where you're always looking for some confirmation and some expertise. So that also helped a great deal. And then over time, it was also about supporting people with remote planning services. Right? It's not that the world had stopped. People still wanted to furnish their complete homes. People had a huge challenge with furnishing new homes that they had purchased during this time. Right? And then came the third era of opening up the business one step at a time. And then the focus has always been maybe the August 20 to December 20, and even until today, the focus has always been how do we secure a safe environment for customers who are getting into physical retailing or returning back to physical retailing, and leave it really to the customer's choice in terms of whether they wanted to shop online or in the store. But also some of the other aspects in terms of looking at the supply situation, for example. I think most retailers would agree that the supply situation is not where we would like it to be. And how do we deal with some of those challenges? So in that sense, I would say that there are consumer challenges. There are some more coming from the demand side and changes in consumer behavior. There are, of course, the challenges of coping and enabling our co-workers to cope, which is very important for the retailer in general. And then, of course, there are the supply side of the challenges, which is in terms of suppliers coping, transportation networks coping, raw material prices coping, and so many other things that we've had to do. So I would say that the challenges have been across all three elements, and we've had to find innovative solutions for each of them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in all our conversations also with various retail businesses, clearly the pace of change is too high, and trying to cope, reskilling our own people, like you said, even our frontline store workers, how do we reskill them? How do we get them digitally savvy? Which technologies do we invest in? How do we build in capabilities to capture consumer data, marketing technology? So clearly there is a lot that organizations need to pivot towards, unlearn some of the previous capabilities, learn some new capabilities. So I'm sure all organizations are grappling with that. So Abhishek, do you see that as a big challenge, or do you think you're able to handle that?
See, what happens is that earlier when we started in the pandemic, a delivery which was happening in 1.5 hours time or 2 hours time was giving a delight to the consumers, right? But now with time, what has happened is that what we tried to create was like Harshavardhan was talking about it, right? What we tried to create, like when we are talking about taking the store to the consumer, it means that we created so many shop fronts, right? Each and every shop front is different. So you have a very demarcated consumer base which is coming to one of the stores to his store, which is mapped to his geolocation for the consumer to buy in, has confidence that I keep going to these stores and more. So yeah. Having said that, to map those timelines for deliveries, it is possible, right? It is possible to do it, but to do it for all 100% of your consumers is not possible. So somewhere down the line, there will be some consumers who will be disgruntled, and that has always been there, right? But what you want to do is you want to take one step at a time, solve for immediate what you want to get to, solve for immediate problems, take some steps there, then realize your bigger problems, and then take some long-term solutions to solve for those problems. Because technology is also, at the time when we started in the pandemic area, we did not have those technologies. Now with time we are getting those technologies to solve for the consumer problems which we have. Like just a simple example, how do you track who has gone at what time, and at what time the guy is going to reach to the store, and how will he be able to take the payment? How are you going to reconcile the payment? What consumer has given to the store guy? Can you take that cash? We will have to get so many machines. How many machines do you need to get in the store for somebody to go and make deliveries? So all of these were at the start, were the problems at the start. But I think with time, I think consumers also understand, right? Because you are there, that you everywhere now. Even if you today go to an online website, your consumer promise, the delivery promise have changed. Earlier it was as fast as possible now, but if you see to a lot of websites, you see that the normal delivery time now it is showing is 5 to 6 days, and this is because of the fact that there are lockdown restrictions. There are places where you cannot. There are sealed places, so you cannot do that. So consumers have understood, but yes, I think there is a lot of scope of developing a seamless technology where everything is connected, where you can have conversational commerce at one place, where you can have all your consumer data, everything at one place, where that after once you've got the order, this is the person, this is the time, it is available for a warehouse process, but that is not available for the store, right? So a process like this will take some time, because obviously we are still learning about how we can be better. But yes, let's take it a step by step. The first thing is to connect as many consumers of your specific store to your brand front, and then take the step forward of giving them more and more convenience as much as possible.
So, clearly, obviously, there are enough and more challenges, but what you're saying is we have to be agile. You have to keep building on it. There will be smaller steps that one can take. We don't see a lot of these capabilities, the end state of these capabilities getting delivered in a short span of 6 or 12 months. It will take time. It will take time,
but yes, let's take some small steps. Keep building that, and then probably you will have a solution which is completely 360 integrated.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting conversation, but we are at the top of the hour that was allocated to us. So, I would just before we finish, throw it open. If anybody would want to come in terms of the challenges that you're facing to get this right, and obviously any innovative solutions. We've heard about certain retailers looking at saying, let me get in more and more ecosystem or partners from outside to come and manage either my technology or my data or my last mile deliveries. There are new players coming in to say, look, why do you don't need to do everything in house? So new models emerging, new investments. Some companies are tripling down on investments in technology. Any innovative solutions anybody would want to come in before we sort of close? I'm sorry I couldn't come to everybody.
I can, Anurag. I can give a little short one there. I specifically like the question, Anurag, when you had posed it, and it's a $1 million question when you said, what does it take for organizations to deal with this change? And I think that's the $1 million question being talked about in boardrooms. There are two things which I very seriously believe into. One is the entire framework, and that has to do a large part with unlearning. I think as brands, as organizations, even as marketeers, we have been spoiled with the 4 Ps around our business, which is obsession with the product, obsession with the pricing, and if nothing is going right, we tend to take the help of promotions, right? And then we try and figure out now in the current discussion, which is the right place. Is it online? Is it offline? Or which is the place? I think that's the fundamental unlearning we need to do. And because That four P's have dramatically changed, and that needs to be put at the core of things, that it's no longer about products, it's about the platform, which basically means organization needs to think platform, build multi-sided platforms which allow your ecosystem of partners, vendors, and consumers to interact freely. And I think that psyche fundamentally has to change. And that has a lot of repercussions in how omnichannel or how physically you're going in. I think in terms of pricing also, we're moving towards increasing personalization, and that's where the MarTech piece fits in, right? How do you leverage marketing and technology to deliver more? And that's more towards personalization. And then in terms of place, I think we've put in very clearly, phygital is the thing that you essentially goal seek in times to come. In terms of promotion, which is a very tactical thing, I think the greater realization in 12 months is the agility of organizations to pivot fast. I think we've seen all those full pages of Sleepy Owl. We got all inspired that day with the Times of India full page ad of a cold brew coffee making it so good during times of crisis. So I think pivot is the big word, the ability of organizations to be agile, to turn around their fundamental business model, and that is the only thing that would allow them to continuously sustain. This was what my thought was. I think there is no single panacea of how do you turn it around, but I think if you've got those core values right in terms of these fundamentals, maybe the likelihood of failure is a little lesser.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said. All organizations will need to be agile. This is a fast evolving, I would say, customer environment. Customers are getting savvier as we all heard. From tier 2, tier 3 towns, vernacular, they are coming on faster and engaging much faster than our organizations can deal with. But that's the challenge. There is no panacea, as Harsh that you said. I mean, clearly it's interesting times. Sorry, we are out of time, so we might just have to end here. But I think thank you so much all for your comments. I mean, it's very clear that there are some clear permanent trends in terms of shift of consumer behavior, whether it is online retail, offline retail, category retail, across. We will need to, as organizations and as leaders of organizations, need to pivot our organizations towards newer capabilities, newer business models, newer customer journeys, which need to be, we've already created, crafted. How do you perfect it? How do you get the cost to serve down? Enough and more challenges, but I'm sure exciting times. And like we feel, there will be those who get this right, who will emerge as winners, and the ones who do not pivot as fast as they can might find that they are just lagging behind. Thank you all panelists for your insightful comments. It was a pleasure to just engage and talk to all of you. Thank you so much.